Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. And excited, we got Dan Cockerell here today from Orlando, Florida. Appreciate you being here, Dan. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first question I'd like to kick our conversation off with is the name of the podcast, Championship Leadership. What comes to mind for you? What does championship leadership mean to you when you hear that?
Well, I grew up playing sports, and I love sports. And so when I think of championship, a lot of great ideas come to mind to leadership, to struggle, to practice and discipline, just kind of like the basics. I've always found in sports, there are no shortcuts. You got to be fit. You got to practice. You have to be right mentally. And so that's why I love sports so much. And I think a lot of people, when you get into real life, you look for shortcuts, but they're just not out there. So it's a good, solid concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that concept too, that you talk about there of like, there are no shortcuts. There's no substitute for putting in the work, the practice to get where you want to go. So yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't you share with the listeners a little bit about your background and kind of the path that you've been on in your life that's kind of taken you to where you are today and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So, I never knew what I wanted to do. I didn't have a path. I enjoyed lots of things growing up. Like I said, I was very active, had lots of friends, had a great childhood. My parents have been married for over 50 years. So I just had like a perfect setting to grow up in. And we moved a lot growing up. My dad was in the hospitality industry, so I was steeped in that from a young age. And I grew up mostly fifth grade on in Rockville, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C., and went to Boston University. Got a political science degree because I figured liberal arts seemed like something interesting to study. I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I worked every summer. So one summer I waited tables in Ocean City, Maryland. And one summer I worked on the Walt Disney World College program. Another summer I worked in a bank, investment company in Boston. And those experiences kind of said, you know what, I love hospitality. I love service. And so it brought me back to Disney. And came down in 1991 to Florida and got my first job as a parking lot attendant at Epcot, and did that for about 6 months. And then I went over to France as a management trainee in January 1992. The park over there opened in April, so I got there about 3 months before it opened. And I was just totally clueless. I mean, I'd never lived in another country. I didn't speak French.
Yeah.
I was right out of college, so I didn't have much experience. I had, some leadership experience through growing up and playing sports and things, but everything was new. And so I got, open, since I'd done parking in Epcot, domestic parking, I did international parking in France. I opened the parking lot over there. So if you ever want to know about parking, I know parking.
Love it.
Ended up staying over there for 5 years. Working in his frontline management roles. Disney, I had 19 jobs with the company, and Disney's big on moving people. If they want to move, there's plenty of opportunities to move. And I just knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that getting diverse experiences was going to help me somehow long-term. And I'm a big fan of that. Everyone I talk to, just tell them experience and exposure is such a powerful thing, whether it's going through difficult situations or going to other countries or reading, whatever it is, get to expose to new ideas. And if you can just accelerate that at a young age, it opens so many more doors, I think, later in your life. So I stayed there for 5 years. My wife was from France, and we'd started dating. And so we had a 5-week engagement because I needed to get my green card or they were going to deport me. So we got married quickly. And our son was born over there. And then we moved back to the States in 1997. And I spent the next 22 years working at Walt Disney World. In many different jobs in operations, almost all operations, running attractions, restaurants, hotels, and eventually was the vice president of Epcot for a couple years, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and then I finished my career at Disney as the vice president at the Magic Kingdom, and that was 2 years ago this month. And then my wife and I, all 3 kids one's out of college, one just graduated from college last weekend, and the other one's a freshman in college. So we are empty nesters. It's just the 2 of us and the dog. So we decided we were going to be crazy and leave the corporate life and go try something new. And it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. including moving to France and not speaking French. And so the past 2 years has been, as I say, I'm a struggling and entrepreneur, just trying to figure everything out along the way, and scrappy and figuring stuff out as I go here. So it's like a whole new life.
So what is it that you took the leap to do over these last few years?
Yeah. So my wife and I started our own consulting company.
Okay.
And I'd been a speaker at the Disney Institute for 18 years. Every time they needed, it's our external training arm of Disney. If you want to know how Disney runs stuff, you can go there and pay them a lot of money, and they show you what they do. But
Okay.
I compare it to kind of like when you go to a magic shop and you see the card trick, you're like, oh, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
And then they show it to you again. You're like, and you get home and you can't do it. It's like, like it takes more than just like knowing how to do it. There's a whole culture to it. But we left and we just started. So we built a website and started doing a podcast. I'm about 100 episodes in to Come Rain or Shine, which is my podcast. Just wrote a book, which comes out in August, but I'm pre-selling now on my website. Keynote speeches. My wife and I have done some consulting in Croatia, in Peru. We're doing a consulting project for a train company down there. And we're putting our fingers in lots of pies and just seeing what works and what doesn't work. And as I've learned through my life, even the stuff that doesn't work, you learn a heck of a lot from it.
Yeah.
And you learn how to do it better next time, or don't do it next time. Or so we're, I think the big thing we're doing is we're just sharing all the things we've learned over, my 26-year career. She worked there for 15 years. And we just have a lot to talk about of how Disney operates. The big thing, my book is How's the Culture in Your Kingdom? A lot of companies love that idea of culture, but they just don't know where to start. It's such an intangible. And so we try to help companies and people figure out. And what I found over time is it's just, behaving a certain way and making sure those around you behave a certain way. And that's how you build culture over time. Very simple concept, very hard to execute. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about, I want to come back to, you leaving Disney to empty nesters to go build your own thing, and talking about how scary that was. And because number one, I just had a conversation with somebody on the podcast yesterday, and it was very similar. He talked about a very similar time in his life. And so I don't know, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something, but talk a little bit more about that. Cause I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners that listen to this show, and it is a scary moment to take that leap. And I think a lot of people don't, because it is so scary or overwhelming. Right. And maybe talk a little bit through that process, if you would, of how long were you considering it? Did it take you a while to actually make that jump, or was it something where you just made your mind up and you went? Yeah.
So I think there's a few things I think to come together. First of all, I think you probably need a catalyst to help you push you there. And I think most people make big decisions and big changes for two reasons. They're either educated to learn something new, or times of crisis, right? So, I watch the commercial on TV and it's talking about high cholesterol and you could be at risk. And maybe I'm going to say, let me think about that. I go to the doctor and I get my blood taken and found out, yep, I'm at risk. And then I get it fixed. I've educated myself and I've prevented something from happening. Or, I show up at I get some heart pain when I'm running, and go to the clinic, and 2 days later I'm getting a heart catheter put in because my widowmaker is 95% blocked. That's a true story from like 2 months ago.
Wow.
So, that's times of crisis. Now, the good thing is the only crisis there was I had chest pain. I didn't have like a huge cardiac and topple over. Anyway, I think those are the two things you do it through. So, I was coming home every night, and one day my wife says, I get home one evening, she said, are you still having fun working at Disney? And, my instant reaction was, of course I am. I run the Magic Kingdom. I'm the biggest theme park in the world. Of course I am.
Right.
And then I thought about that for the next year. For a year, I went to work every day, and I looked around and I said, God, I love working here, but there's something missing. There's just something it's not what it used to be. Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of people, as you get older, it's like, I feel like that old guy, it's not like the old days. Back in my day, we had values and people worked hard. It wasn't that. It was just, it didn't, I wasn't getting as excited. And, you know, when you're running the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, if you're not excited, something's wrong. And
Yeah.
so, but I refused to believe that. And then when I even considered thinking about going doing something else, right away, it's like, no, that's impossible. That's literally impossible. I could never do that. I get paid every Thursday, and you know, I get a bonus, and I get stock options, and there's like 100, 200 reasons why that would just be a dumb decision. You know, I'm almost 50.
Yeah.
I could, you know, ride this out another 5 years and retire and everything. But then you know, she saw it that she's just like, you just don't seem as excited as you used to be. And it took me a year to come to that realization that, yeah, you know what, I'm trying too hard here to get excited about work. And it wasn't anything particular. It wasn't the company. It wasn't me. It was, maybe it was all of the above. And so luckily she pointed it out, because I never would have seen it. If she hadn't said anything, I'd still be there. I never would have made that decision on my own. And we talked about it for a year. And what we concluded was a few things. A, is this a calculated risk? And it's not like our kids were still in high school and we were saving up for college tuition. We were on the backside of that whole financial piece. So we concluded, you know, we can live on a lot less. And so a big part of our decision wasn't only, you know, going and being independent to do our thing, but simplify things. So we decided we're not going to hire people. Like, we don't want to build a big company. We contract people to help us, but I don't want to build an empire. I don't want to build a giant consulting company. We really would just want to enjoy the experiences and enjoy everything. Now, you know, there's all kinds of trade-offs. Do you want stability, and do you want to make sure you know where your money's coming from every week? Corporate life is great. Although I'd argue today that maybe that is out the window now, because, you know, Walt Disney World's closed. So you know, when you talk about stability, what really is stability today? And then the big thing for me was how valuable our experience is moving forward. Because, you know, we have a really nice house in Orlando, and we're, you know, our kids are, our son, you know, he got out of college and got a job, and all our kids are great. You know, we've had the normal, you know, almost get arrested moments, stealing a road sign, but nothing, you know, nothing dramatic. So just like the good old fashioned crimes. But we kind of said, you know what, we came to a conclusion. We don't need more. We don't need a bigger house. We don't need a second house. We don't need a boat. There's a bunch of stuff that we don't need. And I guess when you work in the corporate life, you're just in this mode of accumulate more wealth. So when you retire, you'll have enough money till you die. And we flipped that upside down. We said, well, it's a calculated risk, because she said, you know what, you can always go get a job if this doesn't work out. I'm like, you should be a lot more worried about this. You're the worried. I'm the free spirit. And so she said, no, let's go give it a try. She said, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? You go back and work someplace else, and you know stuff. And so I finally went in one day and said, hey, I'm going to leave, and you know, I can leave as soon as you want. I'll stay for a couple months and wait for the next person to come in to replace me, and we'll have a really good transition. And that's what we did. And it was kind of very emotional to leave someplace you've worked for that long. And then the big problem I had after that, once I got out, was, okay, we made the decision. Now, what do I know? Like, you know, it's almost like you don't even know what expertise you have, because you've been in the same place so long. Everything you do just seems like everyone does it that way. It's second nature. But when you get in the outside world, you start realizing, wow, I know a lot of stuff. What we do there is special. You know, it's kind of like the military. In the military, a lot of things you take for granted. This is how you organize yourself. This is how you set objectives. And you think that's just second nature. But when you get on the outside world, people are looking at you like, that's valuable. And so I started to learn that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do keynote speeches, because as she always tells me, Valerie, she holds me highly accountable for everything, gives me tons of feedback, a lot. Like sometimes like she goes, you want the feedback or not? I'm like, I want it, but not so much. She's like, no, I think it's better. So she's been a great influence. But she always talks about in speeches, she says, well, you fire hosed them again. You told them 50 things and they're not going to remember any of them. Tell them 3 things and get them excited about it. And so I'm still tweaking my messages and trying to figure that out. But I'll tell you, now that we've done this, I'm working harder than I worked in a long time. I'm doing a bunch of stuff I never had to do because I had people helping me. I had a communication manager. At Disney, you have so many resources. And
Yeah.
now I'm
I bet.
like, all right, I'm going to start selling books. How do I build a website? How do I hook that up to a commerce site so people can pay with their credit card? All right, how do I mail a book? How much does that cost? What's my margin going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, you start to get into all these ideas. And I would say the past 8 weeks, the marketing bug is kicked in. I've always been great at operations, executing the plan. That's what I do. But boy, this marketing thing, there's so many fun things you can do. My daughter is launching a Facebook campaign today for the book. And I talked to her, I'm like, how does that all work? And she goes, well, who do you want to talk to? I'm like, people on Facebook that want to buy my book. She's like, well, how about people between 16 and 32 who are Disney fans and have been to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or have seen a Disney movie? I'm like, do you know who they are? I'm like, she's like, yeah, there's 50 million people. I'm like, well, let's go talk to them. So
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot about this. It's fun. And, the other part of it is just, we work a lot, but the freedom we have is just, that's been so, it's priceless. Just being able to decide what we want to do. There are no weekends anymore. For me, I work on Sunday, I work on Saturday, I work on Monday, I take Tuesday off. You do what you want to do. You create your own day. And that is just like, it's a really cool thing after being in such a structured environment for so long. But I couldn't do what I'm doing today if I hadn't done that first. So it's,
right.
There's a time and place for everything, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate you, sharing that process too. It's great. So thank you. Who are some of the championship leaders, coaches, mentors that you've had in your life that have impacted you, and maybe less about who they are, but really more about like how they did, or what is it about them? What are some characteristics that really stood out that maybe even have helped to mold who you are as a person, as a leader?
Yeah. Probably more than I can remember. I've always kind of done things saying, you know what, you have mentors and role models around you all the time. I think people a lot of times look for the ones they're supposed to look for, like the coach or the father or grandfather. And I certainly, they were role models for me.
Yeah.
But I find I've now, as I'm getting older, I think I'm much more open-minded to learn from everybody. And so I just had a lady call me yesterday. I send out an article every Friday morning. I curate these articles. So, I realized creating content is really time consuming. So I create content, but I also find really good articles and send them out to my subscribers. And a lady responded and she said, this one really hit the mark. She goes, thank you for this. And it's funny, you have like, I don't know, 6,000 or 7,000 people getting the article. It seems like every week there's always one that says, how did you know? I'm like, well, the odds were good. There's 7,000 people. The odds are you were having a communication problem. So she said, this is exactly what I needed. She said, I've been through some really difficult circumstances, and this really has connected with me to get motivated and get moving. And I could tell there's something there. I said, well, look, if you ever want to talk, here's my number, set up some time. And she called me yesterday and we chatted, and boy, she's had a lot of stuff come, and just, I won't get in the list of details, but just all kinds of family issues, professional issues, health issues. And she's really on her own right now. And we talked, and she was very motivated. She said, look, I realized I could sit around and complain about this, but no one's going to help me. So I got to get up and get motivated and go do something. And that's why I sent an email to you. She said, I really do appreciate the fact you were available to talk to me. I said, well, look, I want to be clear with you. Karma is a big thing for me. And I believe that people create their own opportunities. They create their own luck. You sent the email back to me and made that comment. That's why we're talking today. It's not because I agreed to meet with you. I said, you're already on the path. The fact that you see that this can be in your control, you're 80% of the way there now. Now you just got to find what the opportunities are. And we figured out 3 things. There's 3 people I'm going to introduce her to that may have opportunities for her based on her skill set. So she's a role model for me. When I got up this morning, I'm like, I don't have any problems. Whatever problems I have, I'm just going to forget about them, because what she's going through right now, this is nothing compared to that.
Yeah.
And so that, I got that learning yesterday. My grandfather, he retired, he graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, the class of 42, which was the 3-year class. So they got him out in 3 years and got him off to war. And he was on the Columbia during the war and retired as a rear admiral. And he was always just a really impressive guy. And people who listen to my podcast know, and I use this in speeches all the time. He had a phrase that he used, and he wrote it in a frame for me that I still have. And his saying was, you do your best and then you forgive yourself. And that for me was just, I love that, because, this guy was a rear admiral. He was in the war. He ran a shipyard up in Pennsylvania. He ran Webb Institute of Naval Architecture. I mean, this guy was smart, had great leadership. And to hear someone like that say, you do your best and you forgive yourself, I just think it's a great phrase. And people always hear that quote differently. But he was incredible. My parents, my dad was in, I'd say I wouldn't be doing this today if it wasn't for him also. He left after 16 years at Disney. He retired at 63. And then he went off and wrote 4 books, podcasts, he's been building courses. So he had a whole nother life after Disney. And he's been a great mentor for me to help me figure it out. And then my wife is, it's taken us 2 years to learn how to work together. We've been married for 27 years successfully most of the time.
Yep.
I didn't expect this. I mean, I'm like,
yeah.
We trusted each other personally, but we didn't trust each other professionally because we really work differently. And we've gotten to a place now where I trust how she comes together. She works totally differently than I do, but now she's creating content and she's writing a book, and we've had to learn how to respect the differences in each other. So that's been a great learning. And then I guess the last thing, when you work at Disney, there's so many talented people that get attracted to that place. It's a high performance environment. It's a high pressure environment. The responsibilities, the expectations are so high. And when you work with people like that, you just get better. You play way above you box above your weight class, right? You get to a point where you're performing much higher than you would normally because you're just trying to keep up with everyone. And it's a very positive thing. But it's you're committed all in because you have so many great role models around you.
Yeah, absolutely. What talk about that quote from your grandfather a little bit. Like what you say that some people hear it a little bit differently. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, for me, it's you get up every morning, and first of all, if you really can have that attitude, you're going to do your best. You're already ahead of a lot of people because a lot of people don't decide to be their best every day. Yeah. They decide to be good, but they don't decide to be great. Yep. They just get in a mindset. They get in a rut. They let their mind take over, and with negativity, they feel like victims. I mean, your mind is a really powerful thing, and it can. So if you can just get up every morning and be like, you know what, I'm going to have a great day, and I don't care what happens or what people do. I'm still going to get through this day, and I'm going to get it done. And you go in, and sometimes your best isn't good enough. And you come home at night and you're like, wow, that was a bad day.
Right.
I did the best I could, and I still wasn't good enough to handle what came at me today. But you know what? It's in the past now. There's nothing you can do about it. And you can sit and think about it all day long. Now, you should learn from what happens to you. But I think a lot of us, we dwell on them. And I think there are people, I was listening to a lady talk, she said, a lot of people carry shame around with them. They won't let go of things from the past. And it's supposed to be like guilt is a good thing, right? If you don't feel guilty, then you don't care. And I don't believe that. I think you need to learn and change. But you can't just carry stuff with you and say, I'm never going to forgive myself. And so you do your best, you go to bed, the next morning you forgive yourself and say, I'm going to try again today. I'm going to try to be my best again today. And you just keep that every single day. And over time you get better. And sometimes you're going to settle that you're never going to get good enough to do certain things. You're never going to be, I don't know, if you want to be in sports, you're never going to be fast enough, tall enough, strong enough. In school, maybe you're never going to be as good in math or you're not going to be a good writer, whatever it looks like, you're not going to get the level that you want to get to. But how hard do you want to push and find the stuff that you're naturally good at? I'm a big believer in that also. Stack the deck in your favor. If you're fast, play a sport where you have to be fast to be good. If you're a good problem solver, then get a job where you have to solve problems. There's an alignment issue. And I think a lot of people just decide, well, I want to go do what I want to do based on what my society's telling me or my parents tell me or my spouse tells me. And I'm a big believer, you got to run your own race. Go pick your own goals. Only you can define what your success is. But And I'm learning how to do it better. I go out every day, try to do my best, and then I'm able to shed all that, and the next day get up again and go back at it, and not let my confidence get down, and don't get down on myself because I made a bad decision or handled a situation poorly. I'm like, all right, I learned from it. If I do it again, then it's a travesty because I've already done it wrong once.
Yeah.
A lot of people just keep making the same mistake, and then they feel guilty and keep saying, it's like you make no progress there.
Right.
So I think
right.
that idea of self-awareness and change is a big deal. And I have moments regularly. I think I'm a pretty self-aware person, but then you have a moment, you're like, man, I wasn't self-aware at all. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
You know? So it's definitely a lifelong endeavor, I guess, to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, you never really fully arrive. Right. So that's,
Right.
I guess, the fun part. You're always working on it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What, as we start to wrap it up here, what would be one or two pieces of advice or life lessons, guidance you could give that if the listeners were to implement today would help them move forward today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll use the layout of my book because that's the way I thought about it.
Yeah.
I have three, and this isn't exactly how the book flows because it's more on, management and leadership, but it's about culture. I have three buckets in my life, and I've always used those I use them as an internal scorecard of how I'm doing personally. And I always ask people, what do you think my number one priority is? So what do you think it is?
What your number one priority
The number one
is?
priority in my life is?
Your family?
Yeah, family. It should be family, right? Because if it wasn't family, then that'd be a problem. I'd be pretty selfish. But it's not my family. Family's second for me. I'm my number one priority.
Yeah.
And I've just learned over time. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know if I agree with that. I said, well, I'm not asking you to agree with it, but I just thought about, if I take care of myself, if I'm physically fit, if I'm mentally in good shape, if I get enough sleep, if I eat right, if I handle stress appropriately and keep things in context, if I'm organized and are able to anticipate things, I'm a much better husband. I'm a much better father. I'm a much better son. I'm a much better boss, and everything just gets better. And it's the same thing. Once again, going back to sports analogies, you never hear athletes bragging about the fact that they stayed out till 3 a.m. at a club and didn't hydrate before like a big game. That'd be irresponsible to their teammates. Why would you brag about that? It may happen, but that's somehow we said, that's what we tell people. Well, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night and I haven't been eating right because I'm so busy. It's like, well, you're totally in control of that. So that's my first bucket. My second bucket is my family. And when I talk about family responsibilities, I define what those are. So for me, for example, some of the responsibilities I have, I got up this morning and I emptied the dishwasher and put all the dishes away. And when my wife came down, she didn't have to do that. I went out and got the paper this morning. So there's things where my daughter texted me earlier and I called her back. It's not these big moments. It's all these little responsibilities. Are you paying attention to things? Are you calling your mom? Are you remembering your wedding anniversary? And once again, you don't always get these right, but it's all those things together. And then the last thing is, career, whether I'm working for a company or working myself, am I being successful in how I'm doing? And so the great thing is when you have just a few priorities, and as I call them buckets, I can measure every single day how I did. So today, my wife got up, emptied the dishwasher, we walked the dog, we had a conversation about some work we have to get done. So far we're doing good. I'm probably going to do something dumb today and she's going to get mad at me. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll get half a point for that today.
Yeah.
Professionally today, I got this podcast. I have a webinar I'm doing at noon. I got a couple more things. We'll see how that goes. And then with myself, I just got back from a 4-mile run. So I did pretty well today, taking care of myself. So today so far is a really good day. If a 2 out of 5, 2 out of 3 day is a really, really good day. Sometimes I don't have time to work out because I'm traveling. So I have to sacrifice myself. Some days I'm not there to help my family out because I'm working or I'm doing something different. So you're always sacrificing one thing over the other. But I think you just got to figure out what really are your priorities, figure out what those are, and then make a list of all the actions and behaviors. What are the things you're actually doing to support those values? And that's going to tell you what you really value.
Yeah.
Because these days you hear people talk about what they're passionate about, what they believe in, but then you see what they, and there's just this dissonance. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, well, if you really think that, why did you do this?
Right.
You know, my company, I'm big on service. I think service is like super important. Take care of people. So I got it's funny. I got an email this morning from someone who bought my book, and they said, you know, I could have sworn I bought 2 books and I only got 1. And I looked on the spreadsheet, it said 1, and I'm like, they only bought 1. But then, you know, I'm like, all right, look, I'm in the service. I worked at Disney. So I sent them a note. I said, look, I think I have, there's something wrong with my spreadsheet. And it's saying, but I'm going to get another one in there and I'll figure out what the glitch on my end is. As far as I was concerned, they were wrong. Then they send me the receipt. They paid for 2 books. So I do have a glitch.
Yeah, you do have a glitch.
I do. There's something wrong on my end. But the point was, it's not that I have a glitch. It's the fact that, okay, you know what? The customer's always right. And I'll get them another book because it's not up to me to tell them they made a mistake. And if they want 2 books, they get 2 books. And I learned that working at Disney. So I think it's just, once again, what do you believe in and what are you doing? If you want to be fit, then get out and go walk or run. You don't have to be a triathlete. Go do something. If you want to have good health, go to the doctor and eat right and keep track of your calories. If you want to have a good relationship with your kids, then check on your kids and take interest in them. So once again, very easy concepts, very hard to execute. But if you can get clarity, if you start with clarity, there's a bunch of other stuff you have to do, but that's for me the biggest accountability. If I really believe some things, if I do them, I'd follow through on them. And if I fail, then maybe I didn't think they're really important or not. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I love it. Great. I love the buckets, and clarity is huge. Yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't take the time to do, and it's important. Let us know a little bit more about how we can find your book, your podcast, and any other ways we can follow you.
Yeah,
sure. Find out more what you're doing.
Yeah. So culture-kingdom.com is the website I'm selling my book on. I wanted culturekingdom.com, but they're going to charge me $5,000. So I had to settle to have a dash. I hate the dash, but I'll take it for now.
Yeah.
Also, Come Rain or Shine is my podcast, and it's on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcast. And my website is dancockerel.com, but we just launched, and we're like 99% done, cockerelconsulting.com. And my wife took over that project, and it looks 50 times better than my website. So over time, we're going to slowly transition over to that one, and it features both of us. So cockerelconsulting.com, dancockerel.com, culture-kingdom.com. Any of those, they're all connected. So.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking some time today, Dan. It's been awesome. Appreciate it.
Good talking to you, Nate. Thank you.
Yep.